The hallway outside Valiantech's executive boardroom was usually silent at night, but tonight it vibrated with tension, the kind that clung to walls like static electricity. Damon Voss erupted through the polished glass doors, his voice slicing through the quiet like a blade. Unbelievable, incompetent idiots, all of them. His designer shoes hammered the marble floor as he stormed out, jaw clenched, eyes burning with the kind of rage only a billionaire accustomed to winning could produce. Damon's hands shook, not with fear, but with entitlement, the kind born from always having the last word. Behind him, frightened executives lingered like shadows, none daring to step into the blast radius. At the end of the hallway, a lone janitor quietly wrung out a mop. Elijah Brooks worked the night shift, not because he had to, but because it gave him a kind of peace the daytime world refused him. He moved calmly, rhythmically, as if he could wipe away the chaos of the world one tile at a time. He didn't know yet that tonight would test every part of him. Damon spotted the bucket first, then the mop, then the man, and something inside him snapped. "You," he barked, stomping toward Elijah like a storm cloud preparing to strike. "Are you blind?" Elijah looked up steady. "Is there a problem, sir?" "There's water streaks on the floor," Damon spat. "You people have one damn job and can't even do it right." The phrase hung in the air like a slap. "You people." But Elijah didn't flinch. He simply nodded, wrung out the mop again, and said softly, "I'll clean it." His calmness only ignited Damon further. "Do you even care about your work? Do you take pride in anything?" Elijah paused his mopping, absorbing the insult quietly, the way a stone absorbs heat without changing shape. "Yes, sir," he said, "I do." Damon scoffed loudly. "Yeah, well, it sure as hell doesn't look like it." He stepped closer, towering over Elijah like he wanted the intimidation to land physically. Damon was used to fear, used to people shrinking when he raised his voice. But Elijah didn't shrink. He didn't cower. He simply remained. That silent steadiness enraged Damon more than any argument could. "I swear," Damon hissed, "this company is drowning in useless." His words trailed off as Elijah bent slightly, reaching to adjust the mop handle. For a brief moment, the sleeve of his uniform slid back. Just a few inches, just long enough. A shape etched in stark black ink curved over the toned muscle of Elijah's forearm. Damon froze mid-breath. A phoenix. Not the classical kind, not the decorative kind. The phoenix. Geometric lines, sharp angles, rising flames, exactly as he remembered. His vision tunneled. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs. For a second the hallway disappeared, replaced by darkness, a crushed car, blood in his eyes, the faint scent of gasoline, and arms lifting him from twisted metal. Arms with that exact tattoo. He stumbled backward, eyes locked on Elijah's forearm as the janitor calmly resumed mopping, unaware of the shock trembling through Damon's body. "No," Damon whispered. "No, that's impossible." Elijah glanced up. "Did you say something, sir?" Damon didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was too busy rearranging itself, trying to reconcile the impossible truth forming in front of him. This man, this quiet janitor he'd just humiliated, was the same one who had once dragged him from a crushed car, saving his life when no one else was around. The man Damon had waited 2 years to find. The man he owed everything to. And he had just spit on him. Damon opened his mouth, but no words came out. He felt powerless, a word he had never experienced, not once in his adult life. The world tilted, and for the first time the billionaire CEO felt something he didn't recognize. Shame. Real, deep, suffocating shame. Elijah continued cleaning silently, unaware of the storm unraveling just a few feet away. And Damon, the man who built an empire off dominance and control, stood trembling, not because of fear of Elijah, but fear of what he had just done to him. If stories like this mean something to you, please subscribe. I spent a lot of time crafting this story for you. The next morning at Valiant Tech didn't begin with meetings or emails or the usual cascade of corporate noise. It began with silence, the kind that hides under the skin. Damon paced in his office, his reflection fractured into thin slices across the floor-to-ceiling windows. He kept replaying the night before, the insult, the tone, the disgust he had hurled without restraint. And the tattoo. The tattoo. His hand shook as he touched the scar beneath his shirt, the one left by the rescue the world never knew about. He'd been drunk on power for so long that humility felt foreign, allergic, even. But something in him had cracked wide open the moment he realized who Elijah really was. Yet instead of apologizing that morning, instead of facing the man he owed his life to, Damon did what he always did when threatened. He hid behind control. He pushed a button on his desk. "Get HR in here," he ordered. A minute later, Marissa from Human Resources stepped in, tablet in hand. "Yes, Mr. Voss. I want the night janitorial staff reviewed, performance audits, efficiency reports, get me everything." Marissa blinked. "Sir, is something wrong?" Damon paused. There was a twinge of guilt, but ego won. He couldn't reveal weakness. He couldn't admit he'd been saved by, of all people, a janitor. So instead he lied. "I saw carelessness, sloppiness, fix it." "Yes, sir." She turned to go. "And Marissa," he added sharply, "keep this confidential." She nodded once and left. Damon leaned back in his chair. He had no plan, no clear idea of what he was doing. His mind vacillated between two competing impulses: doing the right thing or to protect his image. And so, instead of choosing, he did nothing, which was, in its own way, a devastating choice. Elijah's night shift started quietly. As always, he arrived early, changed into his uniform, tied his boots neatly, and took a deep breath before entering the building he kept immaculate. He never saw himself as just a janitor. He was a man who did every job with honor, whether sweeping floors or facing fire. And yet he had learned long ago that people judged before they saw. He didn't resent it, he simply accepted it, like gravity. He had no idea that an invisible storm was about to crash over him, created by the very man he once saved. Around 7 p.m., Elijah returned to the executive wing. It was spotless from the night before, but Damon's voice still echoed in his memory. "You people, pathetic, useless." He replayed it, not with anger but with mild disappointment, not at Damon, but at how predictable the world could be. As he began organizing supplies, a security guard named Malik approached him. "Brooks," Malik said softly. "FYI, HR's sniffing around the night shift, something about performance issues." Elijah frowned. "Performance who?" "You," Malik said bluntly, "and maybe the whole department." Elijah absorbed it without blinking. No panic, no fear, just quiet confusion. "Thanks for telling me," Elijah said. Malik nodded. "Watch your back." At 11:12 p.m., Damon appeared on the executive floor again. Elijah heard him before he saw him, the heavy, impatient footsteps of a man who believed the world owed him space. Damon rounded the corner. For a moment, both men locked eyes. Elijah offered a polite nod. "Good evening, Mr. Voss." Damon swallowed hard. His mouth opened slightly, as if he might say something human, something sincere. But ego, that old, poisonous companion, wrapped around his throat. "Evening," Damon muttered coldly. He didn't apologize. He didn't acknowledge the night before. He simply brushed past Elijah as if nothing had happened. And then came the escalation. When Elijah moved to clean the CEO's office door handle, a simple task he'd done 1,000 times, Damon snapped. "Don't touch that." Elijah blinked. "Sir, I don't want you in my office. I don't trust you in there." The choice of words landed like a blow. Understood, Elijah said quietly, taking a step back. But Damon wasn't done. His shame churned violently inside him, and instead of facing it, he projected it outward. You know, Damon added, voice dripping with disdain, if you put half as much effort into cleaning as you do into minding your own business, this company might actually look presentable. The hallway fell silent. Elijah didn't speak. He didn't defend himself. He simply lowered his eyes, absorbing Damon's words the way earth absorbs rain, without complaint. But inside something shifted, a seed small, unassuming, quiet. But it was there. A seed that, one day, would grow into the moment Damon could never take back. Later that night, while cleaning the lower-level supply room, Elijah's coworker Sandra noticed him rubbing his forearm, the one with the tattoo. "You okay?" she asked. "Just tired," Elijah replied. She noticed the tattoo peeking from under his sleeve. "I don't think I've ever seen that one before," she said softly. Elijah hesitated, then carefully lowered his sleeve again. "It was a long time ago," he said, "a different chapter of my life." Sandra tilted her head. "Military." Elijah gave a small smile, one that held too much weight to be casual. "Something like that." He turned away, ending the conversation gently. Sandra watched him for another moment, sensing something unspoken in his posture, a quiet strength, the kind that isn't loud or boastful but forged through fire. There was more to this man than floors and buckets, much more. But she didn't press. Some stories aren't told, they are revealed. Every time he crossed paths with Elijah, his stomach knotted. Every glance at Elijah's arm made him sweat. Every quiet nod from the janitor felt like judgment, even though Elijah judged no one. And so Damon escalated. He began leaving messes on purpose. He criticized Elijah for things he didn't do. He filed a complaint to HR claiming Elijah was insubordinate. He demanded Elijah avoid the executive floor unless escorted. It was cruelty born from fear, the kind a powerful man inflicts when he's terrified of losing control. And Elijah accepted every blow in silence. Not out of weakness, but because he knew something Damon did. The days at Valiant Tech passed in a gray haze of fluorescent lights and corporate monotony. But beneath the surface, a storm was quietly building, one that Damon could not see, and Elijah was quietly preparing to wield. Elijah moved like a ghost through the hallways at night. Each step was measured, disciplined, the result of years of rigorous training Damon could never imagine. He cleaned offices meticulously, never raising his voice, never leaving a mark of frustration. But every movement carried a subtle reminder. He was more than he seemed. It was Malik, the night security guard, who first realized there was more to Elijah than met the eye. "Brooks," Malik said one night, watching him mop in silence, "you move like a trained soldier." Elijah paused, mop in hand. He didn't flinch, didn't answer immediately. Then slowly he said, "Let's just say I've had experience handling difficult situations." Malik frowned. "You've been in the military." "No," Elijah said softly, his voice calm but his eyes sharp. "Something similar." Malik didn't press further, but he felt it. The quiet aura of someone who had survived chaos far worse than corporate politics. Elijah's tattoo had always been a subtle reminder of that past. The rising phoenix wasn't just art. It was a symbol of survival, rebirth, and resilience. It had been inked during a time when he had walked through fire, both literally and metaphorically, and had emerged unbroken. 2 years earlier, that symbol had been the last thing Damon had seen before slipping into unconsciousness in the twisted wreckage of his car. It had been the emblem of the man who had saved him, a stranger who had left without recognition, without reward, without asking for anything in return. Elijah had kept that identity hidden because he had learned a critical truth: power in the wrong hands can destroy. He had saved Damon because he could, not for praise, not for wealth, and certainly not for influence. Yet now, in the gleaming glass towers of Valiant Tech, Damon was inadvertently pushing him into a confrontation neither man could ignore. One night, after another round of Damon's silent cruelty, Elijah retreated to the supply closet. Malik followed him cautiously. "You okay?" Malik asked. Elijah leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I've been through worse. This isn't about me." Malik shook his head. "Man, this guy, he doesn't even know who you are, does he?" "No," Elijah admitted. "He has no idea, but he will." Malik's eyes widened. What do you mean?" Elijah's fingers brushed against his tattoo, the phoenix. "That night saved his life, but he doesn't remember me. He doesn't know that the man he humiliated is the one he owes everything to, and if he did—" Malik swallowed. "He'd never treat you like this again." Elijah didn't answer. He didn't need to. His calm, silent determination spoke louder than words ever could. Meanwhile, Damon continued his descent into petty tyranny. He mocked Elijah behind his back in meetings, exaggerating small mistakes. He compared him to interns, clerks, and other inferior staff, unaware that each insult, each sneer, only strengthened the quiet fire burning in Elijah. Damon's perception of control remained absolute, until he noticed small things shifting around him. Documents were mysteriously returned to proper order. Floors gleamed beyond expectation. Equipment was organized in ways Damon didn't recall asking for. And somehow, the efficiency of the night shift seemed to improve under the watchful eye of Elijah, despite his constant public humiliation. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Damon's sharp eyes caught it, and for the first time in years, doubt crept into his mind. How is he so good? One evening, Damon passed Elijah in the hallway. His expression was still arrogant, but his stomach churned uncomfortably. "You didn't leave a single paper out of place," Damon said, voice low, almost cautious. Elijah didn't respond. He kept moving, mop in hand, silent, as if Damon's comment were invisible. But Damon felt it, the hint of control shifting under his feet, the realization that the man he considered beneath him was quietly operating on a level Damon could not command or predict. And in that moment, Damon's ego fought to suppress the memory of the phoenix. He could not admit, not even to himself, that he had been saved by this man. Elijah wasn't passive. He was patient. Every time Damon attempted to humiliate him, every petty comment and reprimand, Elijah remained calm. Each insult only strengthened his moral position. Through subtle interactions, viewers see the seeds of resistance forming. Elijah carefully documents Damon's abuses. He subtly gains allies among other staff who have witnessed the CEO's cruelty. He maintains impeccable discipline, every floor cleaned perfectly, every office organized. These small acts of quiet mastery hint at a hidden strength, a moral backbone, and a life forged in resilience. And through all of it, Damon remains oblivious, arrogant, overconfident, blind to the storm building just beneath his own roof. By the end of this chapter, the tension is almost unbearable. The audience sees clearly that Elijah's past and capabilities are far beyond what Damon imagines. The quiet janitor is not merely a victim, he is a force biding its time. The phoenix is not just a tattoo, it is a symbol of rebirth, justice, and power waiting for the right moment. And Damon, despite all his wealth and influence, has no idea what is coming. If you discovered someone had this kind of hidden past, would you stay quiet or step in? Tell me in the comments. The tension at Valiant Tech had reached a fever pitch. Every hallway, every office, every fluorescent-lit corner seemed charged with electricity. Damon's arrogance had begun to crack, not externally, but internally, and Elijah, quietly patient for months, sensed the perfect moment was nearing. It began innocuously. Damon was reviewing quarterly reports late into the night, his frustration simmering. The numbers weren't aligning the way he wanted. Investors were breathing down his neck. And Elijah, He was downstairs, doing his job as usual, moving like a ghost through the night shift. Damon's irritation turned into vindictive focus. "Bring him here," he barked to the security team. Within minutes, Elijah found himself standing in Damon's office, uninvited, yet not questioning why. He had learned long ago that confrontation often came unbidden in Damon's world, and the key was patience. Damon paced like a predator circling prey. "I've been watching you," he sneered. "You think you're better than the rest of the staff, do you?" Elijah's eyes stayed calm. "I do my job, sir." "That's not good enough," Damon shouted. He pulled a stack of reports from his desk, slamming them onto the polished wood. "These reports were messed up, and somehow the blame always ends up on me." Elijah remained silent, letting the CEO vent. Then Damon made the mistake that would become the final catalyst. "You don't even belong here. I could fire you with a snap of my fingers and no one would care." Elijah's fingers tightened around the mop handle he had brought with him out of habit, not as a weapon, but as a talisman of calm discipline. For a moment, the silence was almost unbearable. Damon's rage filled the room, a physical weight pressing down on Elijah's shoulders. Damon continued, escalating further. He began insulting Elijah personally, attacking everything he could perceive as a weakness: his background, his appearance, his quiet demeanor. "You're invisible," Damon spat. "Nobody notices you because you're insignificant." The words could have shattered anyone else. But Elijah was not anyone else. His past had forged him in fire, his patience had been tested under life-and-death circumstances, and his mind had learned the power of restraint. But restraint was not infinite. The final straw came when Damon mocked the tattoo, though not knowing its meaning. "What is that?" Damon sneered, gesturing vaguely at Elijah's forearm. "Some childish scribble. You think that makes you special." Elijah froze, then slowly rolled up his sleeve, exposing the full phoenix tattoo in all its geometric glory. Damon's eyes went wide. He stepped back involuntarily. Something primal and unexplainable gripped him, the memory of blood, metal, fire, and hands that had pulled him from death. "Elijah," Damon whispered, his voice catching. It can't be." Elijah's calm voice filled the room, measured, controlled. "Yes, sir. That night I was the one who saved you. You don't remember me, but I remember you." Time seemed to stop. Damon's world tilted. The room, the office, the empire he built on dominance and fear, none of it mattered anymore. He had humiliated the one person who had once saved his life. And now he was seeing the consequences. Damon's hands trembled and he gripped the desk for support. Memories came flooding back: the twisted car, the smell of gasoline, the pain, and the relief of being lifted out of wreckage by strong, sure hands. The man who had once been invisible to him, the man he had dismissed, ridiculed, and humiliated, was the one he owed everything to. Guilt crashed over him like a tidal wave. For the first time in decades, Damon had no control, not over the room, not over the company, not even over his own shame. Elijah stood silently, letting Damon crumble. He didn't gloat. He didn't shout. He simply let the CEO face the truth he had been running from, that his arrogance and cruelty had blinded him to reality, to humanity, and to the very life he had been given. Word of the confrontation leaked quickly, not through gossip, but through the quiet efficiency Elijah had maintained in documenting Damon's abuses. Security cameras, digital logs, and HR memos all painted a pattern of cruelty. Malik, the security guard, watched from the shadows. He had seen the rise of Elijah's patience and the CEO's arrogance, and now the moment of reckoning was unfolding. Other night shift employees lingered near the office doors, watching in stunned silence as Damon's moral empire cracked before their eyes. Finally, Damon managed to speak, his voice trembling. I didn't know it was you." Elijah's response was quiet, sharp. "And yet you treated me as if I were nothing, as if I owed you nothing. Yet the truth is the opposite. I saved your life and you spat on mine. The word struck deeper than any punch, any insult. Damon, the man who had controlled entire corporations with a flick of his finger, found himself powerless. He realized he had crossed every boundary of moral decency, and now there was no way to erase it. Damon sank into his chair, head in his hands, trembling with a mix of fear, shame, and disbelief. Outside the office, the night shift employees whispered quietly among themselves, sensing the shift of power. Elijah, still standing, straight-backed and calm, finally said, "You have a choice, Mr. Voss. Admit your wrongs or continue down the path of humiliation and see what happens next." And with that, he turned, walking out of the office like a storm that had already passed, leaving Damon alone with the weight of his conscience. The empire of fear he had built was crumbling, and he had no idea how to stop it. The world was about to see the shift in power, and Damon's humiliation was only beginning. The morning after the confrontation, Valiant Tech felt different. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher, the corridors quieter, and every step Damon took was heavy with the weight of guilt. For weeks, the CEO had walked a tightrope of arrogance and ignorance, never realizing the true identity of the man he had been tormenting. Now, the balance had shifted, and the world was about to notice. Elijah arrived early that morning, moving silently through the executive floor. For the first time, several employees stopped to watch him pass. There was a sense of reverence, even fear, in the way he carried himself, a calm power that had been invisible until now. Security cameras had captured every interaction from the previous night, and HR had begun compiling reports. Damon, still shaken, tried to maintain control, but whispers spread quickly. By mid-morning, the story had leaked not by gossip, but through the irrefutable evidence. Video clips of Damon berating Elijah, juxtaposed with Elijah's impeccable professionalism, his calm, unwavering demeanor, and subtle but unmistakable hints of the man's hidden past. An anonymous email, originating from a secure HR account, went to the entire executive team. "Do you know who Elijah Brooks really is? The man you humiliate every day is the same person who saved Mr. Voss's life 2 years ago. And yet, he continues to do his job with grace, while your arrogance blinds you." The room went silent as executives opened the attached images. There it was, the tattoo, the geometric phoenix, clear evidence linking Elijah to the mysterious Good Samaritan who had rescued Damon. Damon felt his chest tighten. This was no longer private, this was public. For the first time in his career, Damon realized that wealth, titles, and prestige could not protect him from shame. Every whisper behind closed doors, every disbelieving glance, every sympathetic nod from colleagues reminded him of the truth he had tried to bury. He had wronged the one person who had given him life. He tried to speak, to justify, to spin the narrative. But no one listened. The evidence was irrefutable. His power, the kind built on fear, intimidation, and money, was evaporating in real time. Even Marissa from HR, who had once tiptoed around Damon's whims, now confronted him. "Mr. Voss," she said calmly, holding a stack of reports, "we cannot ignore the pattern. Your treatment of Elijah Brooks is not just unprofessional, it's morally wrong. And now that everyone knows, it's a liability to the company." Executives nodded, murmuring agreement. Some of Damon's former allies avoided his gaze entirely, sensing that the empire of intimidation was crumbling. Damon opened his mouth to protest, but the words failed him. Power, he realized, was fragile. Respect could not be demanded, it could only be earned. Elijah, aware of the shift, did not gloat. He did not shout or claim revenge. Instead, he walked into Damon's office, calm as ever. "Mr. Voss," he said quietly, "you've humiliated me, belittled me, and treated me as if my life had no value. Yet I saved yours without hesitation, without expectation of reward." Damon's face, pale and drawn, mirrored every emotion he had tried to hide: shame, fear, regret. "Now," Elijah continued, "you have a choice. Admit your wrongs, take responsibility, and learn what true respect means, or continue down this path and face the consequences you've ignored for far too long." For the first time, Damon felt powerless, not because of law or threat, but because of moral clarity. The employees who had once feared him now watched him with judgment. His reputation, carefully curated over decades, was unraveling. The phoenix tattoo on Elijah's arm became a symbol not just of survival, but of justice, moral authority, and the quiet strength that eclipsed arrogance. No one cheered, no one clapped, but the shift was palpable. The power dynamics had reversed. The man who had once been invisible was now the moral center of Valiant Tech. Damon, meanwhile, could only grasp at the edges of control he once possessed. At this stage, viewers experience a surge of righteous satisfaction. Damon's humiliation is not cruel or petty, it is poetic justice. Elijah's calm, disciplined patience, the very traits Damon mocked, are what allow him to rise above the CEO's cruelty without compromising his integrity. The audience sees the moment clearly. Justice is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and inevitable. By the following week, Valiant Tech was unrecognizable, not in its offices or technology, but in the way the employees walked its hallways. The invisible walls of fear that Damon had built over decades had crumbled. And at the center of that transformation stood Elijah Brooks, quiet, disciplined, and utterly dignified. Damon attempted to regain control. He filed defensive memos, called emergency meetings, and demanded loyalty. But the evidence was irrefutable. HR reports, security footage, and eyewitness accounts all painted a consistent picture of abuse, intimidation, and moral failure. The board convened an emergency session. The discussion was tense, but the outcome inevitable. Damon was forced to issue a public apology to Elijah Brooks. He was removed temporarily from his CEO duties, while an external review examined his conduct. Valiant Tech implemented stricter corporate oversight policies to prevent future abuses of power. Damon's empire had survived, but his personal authority, the kind built on fear, had vanished. Outside of the corporate and legal arena, the shift was even more striking. Employees who had once whispered anxiously in the shadows now openly respected Elijah. The janitor who had been invisible to Damon became a symbol of integrity, calm strength, and moral clarity. Elijah never sought revenge. He didn't humiliate Damon publicly. Instead, he allowed the CEO to face the natural consequences of his actions: shame, loss of respect, and moral reckoning. And Damon, who had measured human worth by titles and money, finally understood that true power lies not in wealth or intimidation, but in courage, dignity, and moral strength. Damon spent nights reflecting on his behavior. The memory of the car crash, once a distant, terrifying fragment, returned with clarity. He remembered the hands that lifted him from death, the arms marked with the geometric phoenix, and the quiet strength that had saved his life. He realized how profoundly he had failed. He had insulted the one man who gave him a second chance at life. He had wielded his power cruelly and arbitrarily. He had mistaken fear for respect. For the first time in decades, Damon felt humility, and it was bitter, sharp, and transformative. Elijah didn't seek promotion or recognition, yet the shift in power was undeniable. He had earned it through patience. He endured months of abuse without retaliation. Discipline. He maintained impeccable professionalism even under humiliation. Integrity. He acted morally, not for revenge, but because it was the right thing to do. The moral lesson for Valiant Tech and for viewers was clear. True power is not in wealth or dominance, but in moral strength, patience, and the ability to rise above cruelty. Respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. Even Damon, once the epitome of arrogance, could not argue with this truth. The tattoo on Elijah's forearm, once hidden and mysterious, became a quiet emblem of justice. A phoenix that rises from the ashes, geometric and precise, mirrored Elijah's life, reborn through patience, refined through experience, and now unshakable in moral authority. For the employees, it was a reminder that strength often comes quietly, without show, and that those who seem invisible can carry the most power. In the weeks that followed, Damon began voluntary counseling to address his behavior and arrogance. Valiant Tech instituted mentorship programs for employees at all levels, inspired by Elijah's patience and moral courage. Elijah returned to his work quietly, performing the night shift with the same calm precision, but now fully respected and appreciated by those who had once ignored him. No one clapped, no one cheered. Justice in this case was quiet, it was inevitable, it was righteous, and it left the moral landscape of Valiant Tech permanently changed. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this story moved you even a little, consider subscribing. It supports me more than you know.